You're listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series, and my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that you've tuned in to hear is Schmier. He's the German legend at the centre of a few bands, but the two bands that we're focusing on in this conversation, well, one in particular we're focusing on is Panzer, and that's the reason for the conversation, because Panzer have a new album out for 2017 called Fatal Command, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention the other band that Schmier is more famously associated with. That is Destruction. So let's have a listen to what he has to say. Let's go. All right, mate. I'll kick things off then. I've got to tell you, mate, I've been a fan of yours and your band for many, many years, so this is indeed an honour and a privilege, mate. So thank you very much for making the time for the interview. You do have a new album out under the Panzer moniker this time around, and it's called Fatal Command. It's a testament to the band's members' deep association with heavy metal over a very long period of time. And it also features what I think is a very appropriate album cover for 2017, and I'm sure you do as well. I imagine that fans who will get into Panzer will already have heard of you through Destruction and Pontus through his association with Hammerfall. And there might even be a few fans that are eager to hear what you came up with after the exit of the excellent Herman Frank. So that's a very long introduction, mate. So I'll hand it over to you now. How would you describe Fatal Command?
I think it's a very classical heavy metal album in the old way. Of course, we gave it a little extra edge because, with the thrash background, my vocals, are a little bit more rough, but we have a lot of melodies. It's very catchy. It's a tribute to the glorious 80s, to the times before I was a musician. And I think nowadays, people start to forget where heavy metal is coming from. There's a lot of those young bands that have all kind of genres and stuff, but also there's a lot of pop music nowadays in metal, and Fatal Command to me is like highly melodic, but it's not poppy, and that's what you wanted to prove with this album. Also to us, I grew up on this music, but I usually write different music. With Destruction, we write thrash, so it's a little different approach. But for me, it's great fun to do this because I'm basically paying tribute to my roots, and I'm glad I have those friends around. All the guys in the band are old friends, and that's how Panzer basically came together playing. And it's of course a great opportunity to do something else beside your main bands. Of course, we are all busy enough. We don't really need to do Panzer, but we love to do Panzer because it's great fun, and I have the opportunity now to dive more back to my roots, because with Destruction we kind of elevated the 80s metal to a new level with thrash, but here now I'm going back to the times before, and I cannot play this kind of stuff with Destruction because the fans would kill me if Destruction would get melodic or too melodic, but with Panzer I can actually do stuff that influenced me back in the day, Angel Witch and Jaguar and more, and all those bands, of course, Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and that's great fun.
Yeah, I could definitely hear Priest on the opening cut. Actually, it reminded me a little bit of the opening cut from Painkiller, the song Painkiller. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Here it's like when we have quotes, it's like it's a nice tribute, and it's almost a must to have a quote in a remembrance. When you hear a song, you should be reminded of Iron Maiden or Metal Church or Ozzy Osbourne or whatever we have on this album. With Destruction it's different. When we write Destruction songs, I try to be original. We want to continue the Destruction legacy and the sound. With Panzer, it's good to have a little reminiscence on the heroes, and I think that what makes the album good. You hear stuff, and it reminds you a little bit of something else, but in the end, of course, the Panzer sound is also different because we're a little bit more heavier, and as I said before, my voice is a little bit more rough, of course, but it still has those little vibes that are important, and especially Judas Priest, of course, is a major influence.
Mate, I rarely ask my interview subjects a question about politics, but I am going to ask you one if that's okay. It's 2017 and humanity is very much aware of so many of the ills that are happening in the world. Terrorist attacks occurring regularly throughout Europe, the challenges that the Middle East continues to present, tragic and deplorable gun violence as we've just bloody unfortunately seen in the USA and Las Vegas.
Unbelievable, yeah.
It's just shocking, mate. And, the nuclear situation in North Korea, and of course, all of this political discourse over the POTUS-elect Mr. Donald Trump right around the world. You're as good a person to ask as any as I could hope to pose this question. But, Schmier, where is humanity headed?
Yeah, I'm asking this since many years. When I write destruction albums, I've been always trying to look behind the curtain of human brains. And we're now facing a very difficult situation, and it's getting more crazy by the time. And when we did this cover, the cover is supposed to be, of course, sarcastic and show the tragedy of the world of today, that we have world leaders that seem to not take serious what they have in their hands. And they're also like, I mean, we had a lot of bad emails and a lot of bad response on the cover, of course, from America, because Donald Trump has so many fanatic fans, and everything that's fanatic is insane, in my opinion. But when you defend the guy that's been lying all his career, that has lied when he came into office, and how can you support a guy like this? How can he be so fanatic? People are asking me, of course, where's Angela Merkel on the cover? She's a bitch too, and she lied and blah blah. But she's not world threatening like Trump is, because this guy has a lot of power now, and as I said, the Korean things going on. Of course, this guy is even more insane than Trump. So that's the big problem that we have nowadays. People seem to have no more respect for each other at the moment. And
agreed. Yeah.
I mean, it's all about power and getting more. It's the greed in us, and the greed in us was always a problem. If you go back into the medieval times, it's always been there. The question is, when does greed overcome your brain, and you don't think anymore? And I guess when you have a certain power or a certain amount of money, then you just become like this. It's the tragedy of humanity, I guess. Also, history repeating is the same. We had many years of peace now, at least in some parts of Europe, and Europe was growing together, and now it's falling apart again. It's very sad for me. It's very sad for me to see, and of course, I'm trying to write lyrics about. It would be better if I could write lyrics about unicorns and rainbows, And of course, people don't really want to hear those things, That's also why we got criticized sometimes. Heavy metal should not be political. I want to be entertained, but it's not true. For me, heavy metal always been critical and political, and we should not forget that heavy metal in the end also comes from the blues, which was always a very,
of course,
political statement. So. I think it's a little twisted. I would like to think about nice things in life, but the world is just too crazy, and we're trying to show our fans also that we're think about global problems. And of course, I don't have the solutions for it, but in the end, it's a wake up call to us all. We can all make the world a better one if you want, but first step is don't obey your leaders like crazy, because if you obey the fanatic leaders of today, then we're fucking fucked. And I would not go into war for my country. I don't believe that my government does everything right, but a lot of other people think their presidents are good enough to follow them into death. That's fucking crazy. Are we there again? I can't believe it. And that's stuff I write about on the album basically also, but not all the lyrics are political, because of course, there's other insanity going on in the world too, that it's just like normal daily stuff,
Mate, very thoughtful response and very direct, so I want to thank you for that. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenging question to ask an artist, and I do appreciate that you have given me an opinion there, so thank you.
Of course, we're all bashing each other nowadays, there's no more listening to each other. Right away there's aggression. If you go on the internet and see those discussions now also about the attacks, the Las Vegas attack, there's of course already fake news, and there's of course already accusations that it's an inside job from the American government.
Oh God, doesn't that happen every time? Yeah.
And then people are fighting each other. Americans, proud Americans are fighting each other in the internet in a very terrible way, and all this is dividing the world at the moment. And we need to stop to obey leaders that have false information, false idols. We need to believe in ourselves again, and I don't know, it's maybe not possible in the system also. The system we live in has to be changed, and I don't have the solution, but of course there's smarter people than me that trying to provide solutions, and we have to change certain things in the next years. It's not going to be my generation anymore, but I'm sure the world we have nowadays will not be the same anymore in 50 years.
I think it'll
If
be
you want to
vastly
survive,
different. Yeah, and I've got two daughters, mate, so it's exactly what I think about, exactly
yeah,
what you said. Yeah, I don't think it'll be our generation either. I think it's going to be their generation.
yeah. I mean, at least, the good thing, Australia, what a beautiful country. You've been isolated for many years. Now it's maybe a good thing to be far away from all this shit, I mean, you definitely have less problems in Australia than we have here in Europe or in America.
We do have less. We do have an occasional, or I wouldn't even say an occasional thing, unfortunately. We have regular terrorist incidents, unfortunately. Well, what I'd consider to be regular terrorist incidents if you go back 5 years ago when we virtually had none. But in the last sort of 3 to 4 years or so, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, it's, well, I don't know, what do you want to call regular, but it seems like every 6 months or so we have something pretty serious go on, or there are reports that the police or the armed forces have stopped something very serious from happening. So I'm just glad that the
Yeah,
intelligence agencies do such a great job.
yeah, and we need the government to do something about it. But we don't want total observation. That's the next thing.
Mm.
And
Very
on
Orwellian,
one
isn't
side,
it?
yeah, it's a thin line. Everything is a thin line. You're in Europe. What Angela Merkel did was a disaster. She opened up Europe without borders. So everybody that has wanted to escape from their countries tried to run into Europe.
Go to Germany.
And then we have Donald Trump that wants to build a wall in America against Mexico again. It's like so diverse. And like this, it can go on. There need to be a new world order somehow, and a more peaceful way of thinking with each other. Also, saving the world will be a master degree on this whole thing. Because if you continue like this, of course, Donald Trump still didn't accept that the global warming is going on, but we all see what's going on in the world with all those tornadoes and the floatings and stuff.
It's obvious, isn't it, really?
So
What's
it's
going
really
on?
obvious. It is, right? But you still push it away. So there has to be a rethinking of everything, and we have to save the world and save the people on this planet, and it has to become one big system. And also, I would, first of all, I'm not a big fan of religious beliefs, so I would take all the religious bullshit away, take it off the table. We all believe in the same shit in
Agreed.
ourselves, in saving the world. Don't believe in shit, believe in reality. That's what I would do. I would forbid all religion if I would be the world leader. I'd say, okay, guys, let's save our asses first until we start to pray to Allah, God, or anything else that doesn't exist.
All right, mate. I'm going to take a 90-degree turn now, and I'm going to ask you first, is it okay that I ask you a question or two about the new Destruction album, Thrash Anthems
Of course.
2? I understand the album's an updated, is a cover of updated, we'll start again. I understand that it's an album of updated classics and deep album cuts from early in the band's career, and you cover Ripping Blind, which is an excellent track on this new album, by the way, from the 1990 album Cracked Brain. And you weren't actually on the album Cracked Brain, so I thought that was interesting. There may be some other songs, but that's the one that I noticed. Now, there is only one controversial album, I think, in Destruction's entire catalogue of work, and I don't even think it's considered a genuine Destruction release, but that's the 1998 album, The Least Successful Human Cannonball. Would you ever reinterpret some of that material?
No. That's a very short answer. No.
Fair enough.
The thing is, on the Crack Brain album, I was still involved. We wrote the album together. We had a lot of musical differences at that time, and we divided. They kicked me out in the middle of the recording, basically.
Yeah,
and they finished.
I read that.
They finished the album without me, and so I still have roots. We did demos together. I've been singing some of the songs before. So when it came to the question, should we do something with this album? I said, why not? I would love to sing one of those songs again. And so we just did it. And we also thought about, we're going to re-release all the old albums next year again on CD as special editions. And we also thought about doing a double album out of Cracked Brain, which one version will be the original version with Andre as a singer. And then I will maybe redo the vocals on the whole album. So it's going to be double CD, one with my vocals, one with the vocals of Andre. I could really do that. I think I now have enough experience to, look back and say, hey, this shit happens and it's interesting for the fans, But on those other albums after me, the band changed the style. They were going a totally different direction. I cannot identify with the lyrics also. So it's nothing I would really be interested in reanimating one of those songs.
Okay, cool. And look, I've spoken in some detail with Millie from Creator and Blitz from Overkill about this, and this was a question about their '90s output. Now, you were absent from Destruction from 1989 to 1999, so almost the entire '90s period. But you never left metal. You started the excellent Headhunter, which I think is a fantastic band, by the way, and I understand is still
Thank
going.
you.
What are your thoughts on the '90s and the music that you created through that period? And I perceive it to be a very challenging time for people like yourself playing music, like real heavy metal music, like you were playing.
Yeah, it was very difficult. But the '90s basically started with a bang when all the death metal came from Scandinavia, and I was working as a DJ at the time in a heavy metal and rock discotheque, and it was actually very good at the beginning. But then what happened in Europe was techno was getting very big, and then in the same time the Seattle wave came over from America, and it kind of broke the neck of heavy metal. All of a sudden the metal scene was falling apart, and it was very difficult to sell heavy metal albums, and heavy metal was considered being like old fashioned really quick. And a lot of my friends were cutting their hair, going to techno parties, throwing little pills and having a good time. And the scene was really falling apart. And the Seattle stuff was getting so famous that everybody called heavy metal old school and in a bad way. So I met a lot of bands lost their record deals. I was doing Headhunter because Destruction fired me, and I wanted to continue playing music. I didn't want to stop. And Headhunter was for me a great opportunity to do something different. So we basically mixed a little bit of thrash with heavy metal and made it our own. And without the Headhunter albums, I wouldn't be here maybe, because it kept me in the scene until 1996. We did 3 records, and it wasn't very successful in terms of touring and stuff. We did some touring with Saxon in Europe. We did a Japanese tour also. We did some shows together, but we weren't like super active. But we still kept on going for a couple of years, which kept me in the scene. And I really remember well, we stopped Headhunter in 1996 because I called up Roadrunner Records at the time. Was the biggest European heavy metal label, signing all those successful young bands now, which were more modern, of course, like Machine Head and stuff like this.
I remember it well.
Yeah, and the girl said to me she was like a good friend of mine working at the label. She said to me, Schmier, if you would cut your hair and you would change your style a bit into new modern metal, I could really sign you. We're going to give you a new image, and it's going to be fine. And I said, you asking me to cut my hair and sell my soul for a record deal? And I just hang up on her. I never talked to her again after that. And this was my breaker when I said, okay, nobody wants to listen to heavy metal anymore, and all this new metal is becoming famous. I'm out. And then I started my business for a while. I had a restaurant for 3 years.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
I had the restaurant. Yeah, I had the restaurant actually altogether for 7 or 8 years, but 3 years I had the restaurant, and before I did the Destruction reunion. And for 2.5 years, basically, I focused on only business. I said, okay, heavy metal seems to be dead. Nobody wants to listen to it anymore. Everybody's not appreciating the roots. But then somehow, at the end of the 90s, the Wacken Festival became so famous here in Europe. It became from a little festival to 5,000, 10,000. And then they asked us to play there. And somehow we reunited Destruction back in the day for the Wacken Festival, which was at the time not so big. It was like 10, 15,000 people. And we played again when it was bigger and bigger and bigger. But the Wacken Festival was a kind of reanimation for heavy metal at that time, because we could all meet up at one point and you could see that there's still metal fans left. Not everybody was cutting their hair and listening to grunge and modern metal. There was still metalheads that liked the old school way. And I think without the Wacken Festival, a lot of things wouldn't have happened here in Europe. Also, people came from all over the world later on. When I remember when we toured the States and other countries in the early 2000s, when metal was also not doing very good in America, a lot of people came from America to Wacken to see that heavy metal is still alive. The old school heavy metal is still alive. It was kind of the mecca for the heavy metal people, and It has changed now. It has changed now because nowadays Wacken is very commercial, and a lot of original heavy metal fans don't like it anymore. But back in the day, it was one of the important events that kept metal going here in Europe. And of course, a lot of bands also were still out there trying to play, like bands like Creator, never gave up, but also they had their identity crisis for a while. I remember that when Miller called me up and said, Schmier, I have to write a new album. I don't know where to go. My last album was a disaster. It was Endorama. So I went to the Creator rehearsal room, and Miller played me all those new riffs, and I said, hey, do what you can do best. Don't bend yourself and be somebody else. Try to be Miller from Creator. And then he did a fantastic album afterwards. I think everybody was in a little crisis in the 90s because the fans were running away, the industry was turning your back on you, and all of a sudden heavy metal was a bad word. It was like, ooh, you play heavy metal, that stinks, that's fucking terrible, So it wasn't easy, but we made it through somehow, and I'm glad I had Headhunter at the time to keep me going.
Yeah. Mate, I'll just ask, how much more time have we got left?
Let me see. Let me watch the schedule real quick, 1 second, because I have another interview. We should come to an end soon. I'm talking too much.
You're right. I've only got one more question for you then.
Okay.
I've actually got plenty more questions, but I'll just ask you one more. Mate, tell us about your relationship with Mike Siffringer. I hope I've pronounced his surname there, the longtime guitarist in Destruction.
Yeah, I mean, we're like an old couple, I always say. We get along very well. We know each other well. We know what everybody likes. We have a lot of stuff in common. We're very different, though. He has a different life than I have. And sometimes you also fight like an old couple, but then we reunite quite fast again because we know each other. And, everybody has bad habits and bad moments, And after all those years, we had our great times in the beginning. Then we had the fight. We split up. We came back together. It's really can compare it to a relationship like an old couple that is married for many, many years.
On that note, I'll let you go, but thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat to me. You're a legend. I've been looking forward to this chat for a very long time. I'm glad the opportunity
came.
Thank you. I'd love to have a beer with you when you come to Australia.
Oh, well, it's looking quite good at the moment. We're talking to two different opportunities to come to Australia early 2018 with Destruction. Hopefully one day with Panzer too. But first of all, now we want to bring Destruction back in early 2018, and I promise you we're going to have a drink together.
Thank you, mate. I look forward to it then.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew. Have a nice one. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that interview subject was Schmier from the bands Panzer and Destruction. Thanks so much for listening.